Around the universe, piracy is common. So common, in fact, that it is less common to find a planet that has not been molested by pirates or currently being raided than anything else. Eventually, the pirates, in their search for more and more trinkets, more and more treasure, came across a galaxy with a small little blue and green marble in it. At first, they paid it no mind, as they were more interested in the gas giants, as they could go in, siphon off part of the gas, and simply leave as long as they didn't go too deep. Go too deep in a gas giant and, well, let's just say crunch. While doing so, they decided to check the rest of the planets to see what other riches they might be able to find. When they finally searched the third planet from the sun, they scanned it to realize not only does it have around 7 billion potential slaves on it, but it's a Class 18 death world, which means these slaves, with a gravity almost twice as much as the galactic standard, are going to be much stronger and much hardier and much higher price to sell. This made every pirate salivate as the news came out of what they had found, and they began to raid the planet. The first raids did not go unnoticed, and around the year 2024 to 2025, by human calendar, the pilots came down, and they began to take not only resources, but also humans. At least, they tried. In some areas, they were able to actually retrieve the humans without much of a problem, as these humans seemed scared. Other times, they would come across so much firepower that they would simply throttle up and wave off their assault and try to escape through the atmosphere. Once or twice a year, they would come, and it wasn't much of a problem, as the governments around the world decided to get their head out of their butt for once and start moving their aircraft carriers in locations around the world so that they could more fight off these pirate raids. Also, cruise missiles were far more developed at that point. As more and more of the pirates happened to be shot down, more and more of their technology could be reverse engineered. However, this did not dissuade the pirates at all. To them, Earth itself was a solid hunk of gold that was just needed to be taken. So they would come down with larger forces, and they would cause even more havoc. They would strafe entire cities trying to get us to protect ourselves, and yet they would just fly off to some other area so that they could do their work in peace without us interfering. However, every time they assaulted, every single time they came through, the humans learned. The humans learned their tactics. They were able to get a couple of the fighters shot down, so they reverse engineered them. They reverse engineered the weapons, although humans were more preferring the old school projectile weapons, missiles, torpedoes, cruise missiles, anything of that nature. And every single time the pirates came down, they pissed the humans off even more. As the pirates' favorite tactic was to, as stated before, strafe a major population center, thousands and sometimes tens of thousands were killed. Innocent civilians that had no interest in anything the pirates were doing were just ended in a few seconds. It was actually a recording sent out. The pirates could be heard joking about how it was so easy to blast humans, and they wouldn't get more than 2 or 3% losses every time they came, and how rich our planet was. Oh, the humans knew how rich their planet was, and they were hell-bent to defend it. It wasn't long until these pirate raids had forced every nation on the planet to call everyone together and a call to arms to fight off these pirates. And when the pirates came down again, this time 4, 5, 6 of their dropships, humanity stood shoulder to shoulder for the first time in known history. Cruise missiles were launched. Fighter craft took to the sky. Ground vehicles took aim as the dropships came through, surrounded by their aerospace fighters. And yet what they faced as they came through, what they thought was going to be an easy target, turned into a maelstrom of all sorts of damage hitting them. Many of the pirates thought that their ships could simply shake off the amount of hits, but that complete insanity of a thought lasted only a matter of seconds before they realized that these cruise missiles were beginning to poke holes in their ship, holes big enough that meant that they were stuck suborbital until they could get them patched. And so the pirates landed. They landed all across the planet, each of them disembarking well over 20,000 of their own people, all armed with exotic weapons. Oddly enough, very little armor on their personnel. However, they did have their machines, and their machines began their horrible work to tear up the planet wherever they landed. Pirates figured that if they were going to land, they would take as much as they could as soon as they were able to take off. But the humans were pissed. Humans came at them from every single direction. The range of the energy weapons the pirates were using was approximately 80 meters before it became nothing more than an annoyance. Anything over 100 meters, and you wouldn't even feel it. You would just see a flash. The humans, however, began to engage the pirates at 200, 300, 400, sometimes 800 meters away with multiple projectile rounds that tore into the pirates' bodies. The pirates were not chitinous creatures, most of them, and could not absorb the hits as the projectiles ripped through their bodies, tearing limbs off and puncturing holes clean through them. The humans continued up this assault as the pirates still flashed back their energy weapons, and closer the humans came. The pirates frantically tried to patch their ships and called in any type of air support they could, but human air support was far superior. In the air, the aerospace fighters, since they had to be designed for both space and in atmosphere, could not maneuver nearly as well as anything the humans could throw at them. In comparison, the humans would say that the fighters the aliens had the maneuverability of an Su-25 or an A-10 Warthog. Those were only Gen 2 aircraft, and the Gen 6 aircraft would fly circles around them. Even the old aircraft that was only Gen 3 far outmatched what anything the aliens could throw, as they were using modern missiles that could lock on, and these pirates could not shake them off. They didn't understand flares or chaff or anything of that, but strictly stuck with their ECM, their electronic countermeasures, to make sure the missile did not lock. However, the pirates didn't understand why their missiles could not lock on to the human fighters. Very few of them could be locked on, and those that flew at them that were even so slow they thought that they would fall out of the sky were able to get hits. Simple aircraft with more than one wing made of canvas and wood were able to come in and strafe the enemy line, as they could not be detected on the way in. This gave the humans on the ground an even easier chance to get in, as artillery was finally dialed in and was walked in towards the enemy ships, and the humans continued their advance. Soldiers, civilians of every make, model, and creed made their way to the enemy dropships. These dropships were approximately 1 kilometer long and half a kilometer wide. They were massive ships, and yet it didn't matter if the defenses on them were still operating. The humans simply called in for artillery to beat the crap out of the hull, and as the hull began to peel itself away, the humans continued to work their way through, fighting their way through the explosions as they made it inside the ships. And when inside the ships, it began hand-to-hand combat, and that is when the pirates knew that they truly were in trouble. The humans, even when running out of ammo, they would simply use their weapons as bludgeons. When they couldn't use them as bludgeons, they pulled out long pieces of metal sharpened to a spike or to a blade and used them to slash, stab, and threw them at the enemy. Whatever they could to make the pirates no longer, they would use. And when they finally broke their bladed weapons, they simply would curse and scream and jump on the pirates, beating on them with reckless abandonment. The pirates may have been taller, but they were not as strong as they grew up in lighter gravity. And the humans would come at them 4, 5, 6 at a time, grab on them, grab the arms and legs, and rip them to pieces as the alien just screamed out, more often than not begging for someone to help as their so-called friends ran away. The aliens tried to hide behind the bulkheads, and as they did, the humans would come up with strange devices, place them on, and then back away. The aliens, not knowing what they were doing, realized too late that these explosive charges were designed to blow these doors clean off their hinges. Even if the door held, being that it might have been a blast door, it didn't matter. The humans would show up with a strange device and use heat to cut their way through the metal. The aliens on the other side, screaming through the comms for mercy, were shown absolutely none as the human breached through the door, throwing in strange devices that exploded, throwing metal in all directions. If not, there was another device that came in, a large flash, and a huge sound would make it impossible for them to see or hear. Delirious, they would stumble about and fall prey to the projectile weapons again. At that point, the battle wound down. The humans had the ships. These five ships were not simply retrofit with human design. No. These ships were each taken, torn apart, analyzed, reverse engineered, and then the humans realized that space travel isn't as difficult as we thought if you know what you're doing. The next time pirates showed up, about 20 years later, they did not face humans in the atmosphere or humans on the ground. Humans flew up to meet them in space. As the pirates were confused at these, they sent out a communication asking who they were. The pirates claimed they had the authority to rip this planet apart. No one else did. There was no communication from the humans. The ships just pulled up alongside, seemingly being friendly, as giant harpoons were suddenly launched out the side of the ship, rocking the pirate ship towards them, and then a port was sent from one side to the other, locking onto the other enemy ship, and then cut its way through the hull. From that hull stormed many humans clad in armor as they began to rush through. No projectile weapons, as that was too dangerous to punch a hole into the vacuum of space, so they simply used bladed weapons and their own two hands to rip pirates apart. Out of all the pirates that raided that day, all 12 ships, one survived. One was allowed to leave. It only left with a single occupant. Not the captain, but the executive officer, who had to sit there as parts of the captain were strewn across the bridge, as the humans had gone in, found the captain, and proceeded to rip out its heart with his bare hands. He returned to the rest of the pirates with a message from the humans. This human's voice came through the recording and simply said, "Listen up, you fucking pirates. You stay away from us." That was all. Nothing more. Many of the pirates chuckled when they heard this, as they believed their clan could take the humans. However, after another botched raid, it became common to say the phrase, "If you see a human, run."